It's the slogan of the state of Illinois, but it might well be applied to every state in the Union. He saved the land of Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is universally acclaimed as one of the nation's great presidents, and Steven Spielberg's much-anticipated new film, Lincoln, celebrates him.
Things which are equal to the same thing are equal to each other. That's a rule of mathematical reasoning. It's true because it works. Has done and always will do.
Joining us now are two authorities on Lincoln. David von Drehle, an editor-at-large at Time magazine. He's also the author of Rise to Greatness, Abraham Lincoln, and America's Most Perilous Year. Also with us is David Wead, presidential historian. He's the author of Douglas Wead, The Raising of the President. Welcome to you both. Doug, I'm sorry.
Hey, thanks.
David, let me start with you. You've seen this film.
Yes.
Is this the real Lincoln as you know him?
I thought it wasn't possible to get this man on film, but they've done it. They capture the charisma and the mystery, which are these two competing qualities of Lincoln that make him so fascinating even 150 years later.
Doug, what do you think about Daniel Day-Lewis's portrayal?
I think he was great, and I think Sally Field stole the show. I was told, some critics say, David was telling me that she was over the top, but Mary Todd Lincoln was over the top. She I think, if anything, was a little subdued as Mary Todd Lincoln. I thought she was brilliant. The nuance, the richness of the portrayals of each of these characters, including Robert Todd Lincoln, were very impressive to me.
David, you in your book describe Lincoln is a man of many contradictions. Yes. What do you mean?
Everyone saw something different in Lincoln. Some people said he was the most willful man in the world. Others said he lacked a will, a spine. Some people would come and say he's the funniest guy, telling these stories. Other people said he was the saddest man who ever lived. I think that's closer to accurate. So he would reflect to people sort of what they were looking for almost as a way of appealing.
If he was sad, why was he so sad?
He lost his mother when he was 9 years old, was abandoned in the wilderness by his father. His closest friend in the world was his sister, 2 years older. She died when he was a teenager. His whole life was a story of loss.
David, you raised a very interesting point. He would reflect to people what they were looking for.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why we remember him so fondly. That's one of the reasons why he was successful at the time. Today, as a president of this country, you can't necessarily choose your messaging because it's all over YouTube, it's all over Twitter, Facebook, social media. Do you think he would have been as successful today behaving like he did back then, Doug?
Well, I don't think he'd be successful today because he didn't have the voice and he didn't have the looks. But if he could write the script, he could make a president. He was a brilliant politician, and I'm glad that Spielberg shows this. Spielberg must have been carrying these ideas around his whole life because you can see it come out so creatively. It's not a perfect movie, by the way. There's some illogical moments, but as I mentioned, you can find Pulitzer Prize-winning books with illogical moments about Lincoln. He's hard to capture. But no, I don't think Lincoln would probably be elected today.
He wasn't particularly appreciated in his time, was he? I mean, there were a lot of his critics really loathed him.
They were fighting a war, basically, over his views, and hundreds of thousands of people killed. What Lincoln understood, though, was that politics is a game of addition, and that Americans are forward-looking people. And so he was constantly trying to bring people to him, taking a moderate position, and always sketching out where he was leading the country, why they were fighting the war, what incredible future the United States had if it could just get through this crisis.
One awkward moment at the beginning is Lincoln meets casually these soldiers, and they're quoting back to him the Gettysburg Address. Actually, no one would have memorized the Gettysburg Address that early. Lincoln hadn't memorized the Gettysburg Address at that time. But it's true, half of the nation was rebelling against Lincoln, and the other half was divided over Lincoln. So it was pretty miraculous he got elected then, let alone
and how
now.
did he get elected then? Because he's very misunderstood. He's sort of this odd character that comes to office.
Well, I'm anxious to read David's book on that.
He was a great political organizer behind the scenes. He would let it look as if events were sweeping him along helplessly, but he was always looking ahead and trying to figure out, well, if events are going this way, how do I jump ahead and get to where I can ride those events? He was very strategic. He was very logical. He always explained things in terms of mathematics. I like that clip that you showed because he was very much about arithmetic and adding things up and jotting down numbers. And so he was a calculator.
At what point, I mean, you talk about his looks. I mean, I was struck by, he's 6'4", so at the time he must have seemed like 7 feet. A very awkward-looking man. But, I mean, at what point do you think he really became appreciated?
Immediately after his assassination. We often think what would have happened if he had lived. And one of the things that would have happened is we wouldn't think of him as quite so successful. He had this amazing story where he solved an incredible problem, the war, slavery, and then immediately left the scene on Good Friday, you know, and became the American martyr, the American saint. And so that completeness of that story, in a way, is one of the things that speaks to us.
All right, David Von Drehle and Douglas Wead, thank you both for being here this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome one and all to a tastier festive feast. So much to sip and savor. A feeding frenzy, to say the least. A turkey from Safeway will have everyone raving. There's fresh, natural, frozen, whatever you're craving. Spend $35 and get a frozen Safeway turkey for 59 cents a pound. Or spend $35 and a frozen Butterball turkey, just 88 cents a pound. So raise your glass, pull up a chair, grab a plate. This tastier Thanksgiving is well worth the wait. Safeway, ingredients for life.
The year was 1972. The Beatles had come and gone, but an ex-GI, also known as the King of Rock and Roll, was still there. This is the first time that footage has been seen on national TV. It was Elvis's only time on stage here in New York, other than TV appearances in the 1950s. But those shows at the Garden weren't televised. What you just saw was taken by a fan with a Super 8 movie camera. That amateur movie is now out on DVD, titled Elvis, Prince from Another Planet. And joining us is a man who was with Elvis that night, the King's close friend and longtime associate.